Hi everyone, I'm Xarani, and today I want to talk about Istaroth. Who is Istaroth, and why does the Shade of Time keep quietly defying heavenly principles? Because for someone who acts so detached from the world, Istaroth has left her fingerprints all over Teyvat's history. Understandably so, because she is after all the Shade of Time. From what we have seen, she carries herself with an aloof apathy towards everything, but her actions often contradict her demeanor, because we repeatedly find her involved in the affairs of humanity, and multiple civilizations even worshipped her throughout the ages. This shows us that she is far more complex underneath this outer facade she presents. To really understand who she is, we need to go back through time to a period of eternal night, Enkanomiya. One of her earliest aliases can be found in the Byaku Yakoku collection, where she is known as Tokoyo Okami. Legend has it that Abaraku was opened up to wisdom by Tokoyo Okami and was thus able to bring light to Enkanomiya through the Dainichi Mikoshi. Because up until that point, Enkanomiya had not seen the sun and was trapped in an eternal night, allowing the Vishaps to freely and without restriction hunt and eat humans. Some of the wisdom he received from Tokoyo Okami is something Abaraku tried to bestow upon the Sun Child, who had intended to punish him out of jealousy for creating the Dainichi Mikoshi. The universe has no beginning and no end, and so it was with the land that once was. But this matters not to us, for the land that bears us no longer has anything to do with that eternity without start or ceasing. The origin of heaven and earth is like the chicken and egg, and are not dragons and snakes kin? No sooner had the sage Abaraku uttered these words that he was ambushed by troops who were lying in wait. It is interesting that the wisdom he tried to impart to the Sun Child had to do with the universe having no beginning or end, and with Enkanomiya being cut off from the land that bore them. To me, this hints at the idea that Teyvat may be stuck in a time loop compared to the universe outside the firmament, and the part about the origin of heaven and earth being like the chicken and the egg, in my opinion, can also be interpreted as a loop. Because what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Then in the third year of darkness, the text mentions that the only one who had not forsaken them was the ruler of time. She was the moment, every moment. She was the measure of 1,000 winds, and the sun and the moon. She was every second of joy, every moment of rage, every instance of longing, and every minute of obsession. They call her Kairos, or the ruler of the unchanging world. And in the parable of the tree, we see that Istaroth plays her part as the king's priest, a priest who was the reincarnation of Tokoyo Okami. The gardener went to the priest for advice after the king, who was the reincarnation of the primordial one, ordered him to cut down the spirit tree for some home improvements, even though the gardener was in love with the spirit tree. The priest had pity on the gardener and said to him, "Go and cut the branches of the spirit tree down first. Then cut the tree. Then plant the spirit tree's branches in the ground." The gardener responded, "A spirit tree shall take 500 years to grow." The priest said, "Your one thought shall echo through eternity." And with this, the gardener planted the branches in his backyard. In an instant, the slim branch grew into a new tree, and the new tree spirit became a continuation of the old one. For it is the God of moments, who is able to take seeds from this moment into the past and the future. This is exactly the case with the sacred sakura in Inazuma, where A's sister leaves the seed behind in a moment or memory for A to plant and save Inazuma from the abyss. A tree that now existed in the past and the future, because technically it was there before A actually planted it. Seeds of stories brought by the wind and cultivated by time. A fitting quote, and one we can find at the Thousand Winds Temple in Mondstadt. Being the nation of Animo, it makes sense that Istaroth's heaviest ties lie here. Everything really does lead back to Mondstadt, huh? Before Barbatos became the drunken bard we know today, they were once an animo spirit, a single thread of 1,000 winds, if you will. In the quest A Curtain Call for a Colorful Summer Night, Venti says that when they were still an animo spirit, they had a chance encounter with Time at the Thousand Winds Temple, and that she entrusted them with fragments of her power and authority. This is further supported by the lore given to us in the artifact set A Day Carved from Rising Winds, where the description says, if mortal flesh could not transcend the seat of gods, If the song of this moment could not stay the hand of calamity, then let the desires of countless such moments merge with the yearning for liberty that echoes through unnumbered ages. In a single extraordinary moment, the youth whose very body became the instrument strummed strings that once belonged solely to the master of time. Even the mother of thousand winds was stunned, her eyes falling briefly upon the desolate northern lands. But the flesh and blood of the first to strike the strings could not carry the weight of a nation's song. The great symphony, summoning the usurped power of time, poured a moment's burning fury into a thousand-year instant. The bard's body fell with the collapsing tower, and the name that ought to have endured was swept away by the winds of time. Like frail snows melting upon the breath of spring, it was lost beyond recall of both memory and voice. Only that tiny wind spirit remained on the day when the mother of time and wind bestowed her authority. That tiny wind spirit was Barbatos, who after the defeat of Decarabian rose to the seat of Archon and took on the form of the nameless bard, who had stirred their heart with his song. Mondstadt and Venti help solidify Istaroth's identity as the Thousand Winds, as well as her deep connection to animo, memory, music, and time. But there is another figure who can shed some light on how she behaves towards those who are a bit closer to her. With the introduction of Zibai, we got to see a moment of sympathy from Istaroth, namely during the destruction of Langan. When Zibai saw that the people who worshipped her were about to be wiped out by the heavenly principles, she felt it was her duty as their god to answer their pleas for help. Istaroth tells her all places tainted by the abyss need to be purified, and that includes Langan. Zibai asks what will happen to the people, and Istaroth replies, "You know what will happen. You are but an emissary to the mortal realm. This is heaven's will. There is no need for guilt, and no place for hope." However, this does not ease the guilt building inside of Zibai, so Istaroth warns her that if she goes to answer the call of the people who worship her, she will meet the same end. This also does not deter Zibai. If anything, it strengthens her resolve to defend her people, and Istaroth sighs in response. Unable to stop the celestial nail from wiping out Langan, Zibai falls, and Istaroth catches her in her final moments and splits her soul into 3 deadly selves, imprisoning them on the false moon. This creates the opportunity for Zibai to make a return in the future, though. And with Zhongli's help during Lantern Rite, we were able to revive Zibai and recombine her 3 deadly selves into one. As with all the shades, we must turn briefly to the God's Limits teaser. This teaser frames her as someone who mocks her own power by granting important things like history to experimental life forms merely to pass the time. It also shows her undermining the value of her heavenly duties by suggesting that one could simply switch sides, while also questioning whether attendance at the meeting really matters. It gives off the notion that she has a disdain for the heavenly principles and the order she serves. This idea is further supported by what she had said about heaven's will, and that there is no need for guilt and no place for hope. Considering all of this, her apathy and disinterest starts to make a lot more sense, because what do you have without hope? Despair. So with the release of Dorm Port, we now also have a reflection of Istaroth from a more human perspective. Though it is not confirmed whether Zeitlind is an incarnation of Istaroth, there is definitely a connection there. In German, Zeit means time, and while Lind can be read as gentle, it can also point to the linden tree. And as we know, Istaroth is already heavily tied to trees, seeds, and continuity across time. In the parable of the tree, for example, or the engraved quote we can find from Mondstadt's Thousand Wind Temple ruins. But to me, Zeitlind is not Istaroth herself. She is a mirror through which we can see Istaroth's themes play out on a more relatable and human level. Zeitlind's story is about what time leaves behind. Memory, time, and preservation. Those are the key themes. And interestingly, preservation is also a big part of the Temple of Space, which was at one point connected to the Thousand Winds Temple in Mondstadt. The game often seems to place time and space together. As the Shade of Time, Istaroth does not usually solve catastrophes directly. Instead, she tends to appear at the brink of collapse and leaves behind the things that keep the future open. A person, a seed, a tree, a preserved soul. And sometimes she does interfere directly by making the impossible possible. After Enkanomiya fell, Tokoyo Okami bestowed the wisdom upon Abaraku that allowed him to bring the light to the people who were trapped in eternal darkness, preserving humanity. In Inazuma, the sacred Sakura exists across past, present, and future, preserving Inazuma from disaster. And with Zibai, Istaroth could not stop Heaven's will, but she still refused to let Zibai be completely lost, preserving her within the false moon as the three deadly selves. When it comes to making the impossible possible, we can look to Space and Time Without You. Even the Abyss sibling realizes that their meeting should not have been possible, saying, Istaroth, the ruler of time, must have had a hand in this. There's no other way that the meeting could have taken place. She is still actively shaping moments that should have been impossible, and intervening when important threads of history are at risk of being severed. So here's my theory in all of this. Istaroth's actual job is to preserve continuity, to preserve threads of time, history, and memory. She does this at the moments when they are closest to being severed, and she may not save everyone, she may not be free to act however she wants, but again and again she makes sure that something survives. She keeps spreading seeds of hope in time. Her bored, apathetic personality has been born from the weariness of someone who has watched countless ages rise and fall, with no hope of preventing the destruction caused by Heaven's will, so she resigns herself to acting within the limits of her freedom as a shade. Who is Istaroth? She is the shade of time, the ruler of moments, a being whose apathy is born from despair and disillusionment towards the order she serves. And as a being tied to memory, continuity, and the survival of history itself, she plants seeds throughout time, preserves life, and quietly defies the heavenly principles in doing so. She uses time to nurture seeds of hope, because there is no place for hope in heaven. Why does the shade of time keep quietly defying heaven? I think she wants to preserve a survivable path out of the time anomaly Teyvat finds itself in. She's slowly shifting things by planting these seeds of continuity and hope to find a path forward towards challenging, transforming, or outgrowing the order she serves. Her moments in the God's Limits teaser definitely show signs of her being disillusioned with the heavenly principles order. Her approach to defying the heavenly principles always comes from an intention of preservation, which may force her to be at odds with Asmodee, who has seemingly rejected that idea, but I'm going to keep that for a future video. Tell me in the comments if you think Istaroth really is planting seeds of hope throughout time. And if there is no place for hope in the heavens, then wouldn't the only thing there be despair? If you enjoy lore deep dives, theories, and build guides, subscribe because I've got a lot more coming. Thank you for watching and all of the support recently. Hello to my new subscribers, and goodbye for now.